It's been a minute. Tipping points and puzzle pieces. It is 1 p.m. The best hour of your day. So glad that you can join us today. We're going to have a really good episode for you, as we always do. If you have not been up to date on the episodes, or if you've missed one, now Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces is in podcast form on YouTube. So you will see all of the episodes together. Just go on to YouTube at the Conduit and you can find it there. But with no further ado, let's bring forth the man of the hour, the person who has many of the answers but needs your piece of the puzzle to make it all work, Mark Boatwright Frost. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Though looking at the picture behind me of Folsom Lake's making me thirsty.
Oh man. Yeah, we
That
talked
was
about that before.
yeah, that picture was from like 3 or 4 years ago during the last round of big drought in California.
And
See that dry grass way over there?
mhm.
There's a marine. There we go. There's a marina over there, and there's a whole bunch of really expensive boats sitting on the dirt.
Sitting on the dirt.
Yeah,
Wow.
because they're like a half a mile away from where the water is.
And what is this I'm hearing about Arizona selling out, their water to I think that some Arab nation.
Well, I don't know if they can actually do that because the federal government just came down on their butts and told them that they have to cut back on water. They can
Wow.
try it, but the feds are going to be all over them about it.
I'll see if I can pull it up before the end of the hour is over.
Okay, because I don't know if you're aware of it, but Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, I think that four corner area was tasked with reducing water because of the Colorado River crisis. And hey, Rob Dent just popped in to say hi. And the feds finally just came in and said, "This is how much you're going to reduce, and it's not a choice now; it's now mandatory." Because all four of you guys got to play nice together and share the water, and we are in a crisis with it. But let's talk about people who do massive amounts of development in a place where there's no water.
Mm. Let's talk about it.
So part of I don't know if many of you know that I'm in the process of finishing a document I'll probably have done for editing in a couple of days, and it'll be ready for release next week. I found out that until the 1960s, it was pretty universally accepted in the United States that our water supplies were endless. 1960s. That's 60 years ago. We thought water was endless, and we treated it like that. That it was never going to end, that we had all the water we ever needed. And so we built, homes in the desert. Southern California is essentially a desert. We've done this massive development. And then they found that they didn't have water. So then Southern California started taking water from Northern California. And they started taking it from the Colorado River and from anywhere they can. The Hoover Dam a couple of years ago was feet, and I do mean feet, away from having the water level so low that the generators wouldn't flow. And that would be powering most of Southern California. Water's a crisis. So let's talk about the fact that, a human cannot live more than 3 days without water. 3 days. You can live 2 weeks without food, but you can only live 3 days without water.
Mm.
And you can't have food without water. So how important is water?
I'd say it's pretty critical there.
And yet we treat it like it's nothing. The CEO of Nestle, the former CEO of Nestle, and I suspect that's why he's former, said that water is not a human right. It is a commodity to be controlled by corporations. How does that make you feel?
Kind of powerless.
As I sip on my water. So water's a big issue. Um, so let's switch the topic a little bit. Let's talk about power because you're feeling powerless, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about power. We haven't upgraded the grid significantly since the 1960s. We passed on we, meaning the power companies, passed on technology that would have made it more efficient to measure where outages were and what's going on with the grid, especially after the massive power outage in 2004, which took down most of the Northeast and put 10 million people without power, some up to 2 weeks. We have an aging grid that they talk about, but they never really do anything about. So it's like, wait until the next news cycle, it'll go away. But we are living, as we are pointing out right at this very moment, we are living in a digital age where we require reliable power to power the internet that we are now broadcasting across, to power the cameras that we are now podcasting through, to power the computers that we are using, to power our phones, our tablets, and our means of communication. I mean, how many people have an old style telephone plugged into the wall, which also requires power? But we all live in a digital age, but our power supply is not digital. Think that should be addressed along with water.
Ooh, there's quite a few things that we need to do simultaneously. Just to that end, I was in a transportation equity meeting just before our podcast, and again, US Dot and Wash Dot is looking on how to electrify the state of Washington in regarding our vehicles in an equitable way. And it's a foregone conclusion. The train is 15 stops already passed, and we're not going backwards. But they haven't thought half of it through, and there's so much work to be done.
Same issue. You need power to create the charging stations. You need reliable power. If that power goes out, you can't charge your car.
Well, and the frustrating piece about it is, we got to do it yesterday. Absolutely. But we have to think about what we're doing. And they seem to always miss the equitable or the humanistic standpoint of viewing things through that lens as they go forth and do these things. And they end up in the exact same position, at least in their credit. Now they're thinking about it, but you've already left the station, right? So
So now we're to the topic of the day's podcast. We play nice and we work with the organizations that are in charge of this. We talk to them, they waste our time, they waste everybody's time because that's the strategy, just continue to waste time. We talk to politicians who also waste our time. They're not going to do anything about it. They can't see it, they don't have the vision for it, they don't understand it. So they're just going to spin their wheels and pat us on the fanny and say, we'll take care of it. I think it's time for us to misbehave. I think it's time for us to do something so significant that it changes the model. I think it's time for the Consent Resiliency Project.
ooh, sound like an anarchist. Tell me more.
Well, actually, they are truly democratic in their focus because we're about talking to the people and bringing the people together to address the issues. Because none of the people who are wasting your time can stand up in the face of overwhelming odds.
Absolutely.
Since you're
Good
doing
afternoon,
politics,
Jeff.
yeah. Hey, Justin, good to see you again. Um, in the light of your political aspirations right now, you know how to do political math. If 1,000 people walk into any politician in Kitsap County's office and say, "We need this changed," they have his attention or his or her attention.
Mhm.
So, misbehaving in this sense is bringing people together, explaining the problem in a detailed way, and showing them the solution and turning them loose.
Well, let me say, I think we're getting closer. I have never sought, political office before and did not really watch politics and engage with any significance. uh, before the last 18 months. When I started covering city council meetings, but I was invited to present to the young Dems the other day, and it was really powerful to see all of these young adults here in Kitsap County be so invested in local politics and invited. I don't know how many of us spoke about, hey, we're running for this, we're running for that, and this is why you should vote for us. And so to see the youth taking control of that was really powerful. And I took some time after to speak with a few of them individually and just say, I think what you're doing is great, right? We've got that, tried and true league of women voters, which I think is over 100 years old. But to see the young folks being engaged is powerful. And so the pieces are there, right? And they're on the we may have some of the border a little bit. We just need to push some of the pieces just a little bit closer together. So I'm encouraged, from seeing and having that experience. And hopefully, if
Was
I'm
that
in
a
this,
puzzle metaphor?
it was a puzzle metaphor. I couldn't help it
Okay.
myself. And win or lose, my job is to try to push those puzzle pieces a little bit more together. So,
Mhm.
meeting a lot of new people, which is great, folks I haven't known before. Even though Kitsap County is small and Bremerton is small, it's still vast, right? Because we're siloed off in the things that we do, our clubs, our family, our friends, just the circles we're in. So it really is giving an opportunity to expand myself and learn about other people and what their interests are and have conversations and build community.
And building community is what it's all about.
Mhm.
And focusing on the human is what it's all about. So if we're going to misbehave or misbehaving, it's all around helping people focus on the human, on the equitable, on people working together for the total of everybody. Which, if that's not democracy, what is?
Right.
We the people.
We the people for sure. Before it goes too long in the tooth, let me just share this article with
Yeah,
everyone
please.
and you.
Mhm.
This is from PBS News, which I know that Mark enjoys that news publication.
Yep.
And let me just share my screen here. We'll just go over it a little bit. Uh, Man, it seems like I haven't been doing a podcast in so long. Like I forgot how to run all this stuff. Isn't that funny?
There we go.
All right. So, in drought-stricken Arizona, fresh scrutiny of Saudi Arabia-owned farms water use. In rural Arizona, La Paz County, on the
Mhm.
state's rugged border of California, the decision by a Saudi owned dairy company to grow alfalfa in the American Southwest for livestock in the Gulf Kingdom raised a few eyebrows nearly a decade ago, right? This has been going on, and many of us don't even know. Now, worsening drought has focused new attention on the company and whether Arizona should be doing more to protect its groundwater resources. I don't think we should be outsourcing our water to other countries. Amid a broader investigation by the state attorney general, Arizona last week rescinded a pair of permits that would have allowed Fondamont, Arizona, a subsidiary of the Almaria Co., to drill more than 1,000 feet, 305 meters, into the water table to pump up to 3,000 gallons of water per minute to irrigate its forage crops, right? And so Saudi Arabia has to do this because they don't have the water.
Well, it's
And
actually it's actually the company, not Saudi Arabia, because we're not shipping it anywhere. This brings up a whole other conversation about
yeah,
foreign ownership of U.S. soil, which is a discussion we can have another time. And there's lots of factors to it, but it's a Saudi company, and it's being used here in the U.S. But this is part of what I was talking about earlier when I said that the federal government has come down like a ton of bricks on the four states that are adjacent to the Colorado River and California,
mhm,
telling them that there are restrictions and they are going to meet the restrictions. Now, for those people who go, the U.S. government can't do that, they gave all the leeway in the world to the five states to take care of it themselves. They let them do this for 5 years. It is a crisis point now. There are
right,
people who are going to be without water because no one could take could fight the developers. And so now we have a situation where the federal government has to step in and say, okay, Arizona, you get X amount of cubic feet. Utah, you get X amount of cubic feet. And this is 20 to 30% less than you were using before. Figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why
So,
you're seeing them come down on the Saudi Arabians or the Saudi company is to be very clear. They're going to say, sorry, you can't do this because we have just had the law laid down for us.
well, and let me just read this last paragraph. But again,
Okay.
remember, this has been happening for a decade, right? An
Yep.
interviewer with the Associated Press, Attorney General Chris Mays, said she thought most Arizonians see it as outrageous that the state is allowing foreign owned companies to stick a straw in our ground and use our water for free to grow alfalfa and send it back home to Saudi Arabia. And that's what I mean by outsourcing our water. Not that they're
So,
shipping the water, but they're using the water to grow the alfalfa and then they're shipping the alfalfa to Saudi Arabia, right? We just
wow.
can't, in the midst of this epic drought, afford to do dumb things with the water in the state of Arizona anymore.
Well, and so the alfalfa is one part of it, but they also have dairy farms, and dairy cattle take a lot of water. Milk production takes a lot of water, and they're not talking about that. They're talking about specifically the alfalfa. Now, initially, I thought the alfalfa was being grown to feed the cattle and the dairy farms.
3,000
Apparently not.
gallons per minute.
Oh God, that's nothing. Central Valley of California, which has drained their water, has been doing that for 50, 100 years to grow almonds, oranges, grapes, all kinds of things. But you drain the aquifer, it's a 10,000 year recharge. I don't know about you, but I can't stick around for 10,000 years to watch the water come back.
Yeah.
And that's if we have water, and that's depending on water falling from the sky on a regular basis, which we can't guarantee anymore. Face it, folks, climate's here to change. It's to stay. With all of the dominoes on the table ready to fall, climate is the one that's going to be, that is right in our face now. It is here to stay. It is going to change things dramatically. It's going to create food shortages. It's going to create deaths from storms and from heat. And no one to this point has taken a stance on it. So we have to come together and take a stance because nobody else will. And if that's anarchy, if that's, rebellion, I think of it as democracy. It's about people coming together and taking control of their future. And that's, where we have to go. And if that in the global sense of our culture, that's misbehaving because we should just continue to get our fannies patted and ignore the problems. Keep our head in the sand. And you guys have heard me on this now for 2 weeks. Um, because I've been working on this document for a month or so, and I'm coming close to the end of it. But I also had to go back and re-research a whole bunch of things and look at a whole bunch of things in a new light. And I'm not sleeping so well at night.
Mm.
It's pretty interesting out there, and if we don't do something very soon, there's not going to be a lot to do.
Yeah. We're talking about water right now. Did you catch in the news where they were talking about Florida may have broken the record for the ocean's temperatures?
Yes, saw that this morning.
Hmm.
I haven't gotten a chance to get into it because I've been running around like you usually do. Um, but yeah, it's killing the coral off Florida. It's changing the sea life patterns. I don't know. Did an ancillary discussion about the same thing? You heard about the snow crabs disappearing in the North
No, I
Atlantic.
didn't hear about that.
Yeah, they were billions of snow crabs. The snow crab season basically fizzled away because there aren't any snow crabs because the water has warmed up too much. It is thought that they have migrated north and to colder waters.
Really?
And while we're talking about water, I want you guys to think about something. Okay, 3% of the water on this planet is fresh and drinkable. The vast majority of that is locked in glaciers and ice shelves. Ice shelves are melting into the salt water. Glaciers are melting and running off into the oceans. So the vast storage of our fresh water is degrading into salt water by melting and going to the oceans and running and doing runoff. Um, we're in a bigger crisis than we think we are, and we need to come together and make some decisions about it. We need to be capturing rainwater. We need to be recycling water. We need to be looking stringently at our wastewater treatment processes and make some serious decisions about where we're going to go with those. And there was a company, and I just did research on them to see where they're at, and I couldn't find if they exist anymore or not. But they pioneered small scale wastewater treatment for the neighborhood, which would bring water back up to potable levels. Vastly automated, beautifully designed, reasonably inexpensive wastewater treatment uh, facilities that looked like a house that you put in your neighborhood. And it handles all the neighborhood's waste. But it would require the developers to pony up to put it in.
Mm.
And no one wanted to tackle that because the developers to say, well, we'll just go somewhere else. Except that they don't really, to me, that's kind of an empty threat because they don't really want to go anywhere else. They just want to get what they want to get and not have to pay any money for it.
Right.
And let's talk about developers and responsibility of developers. Have you been following the news of going on in Palos Verde, down in
No, no.
California? Uh,
Update.
So there's all of these really high end homes with beautiful ocean views sliding into the canyon, and there hasn't been any rain. It just started they just started sliding into the canyon. Now this area has been known for years as unstable land, and these homes have been there for 30, 40 years, and they're really nice beautiful mansions on the hill that are now moving into the canyon. 12 of them have started to slide. 10 of them are in the canyon. 2 of them have been marked, and about another 20 have been tagged for as dangerous.
Really?
But it was a known risk. Matter of fact, on the road through Palo Verdes, there's a sign saying road is known to move.
Mm.
And let's talk about our own backyard, Oso, and the fact that all of those homes were washed away in a landslide. And it was a known risk, and it was built anyhow. And let's talk about even in our own backyard. We have in Bremerton, Perry Avenue, not Perry Avenue, Lebo, Wheaton Way. Just as you go past Cherry Street,
Mm-hmm.
there's but before you get to the Y turnoff, there's a brand new multi-unit development there right next to the little liquor store that completely occludes the view of the building behind it.
Mm.
The only purpose for that building is to occlude the views of the building behind it. They aren't really well designed. They're not wide enough to be a really good design. They're not in any hurry to finish it, but there it is sitting there. We have developers developing for all kinds of reasons, and the only reason that they don't develop is for people to live in the houses comfortably. The reason they develop is for money. The trouble is that we're the ones who have to live in the houses.
But we're also the ones that give them the money.
It is true, but they get benefits from all kinds of places. And when coming together as people, we can actually address that. We've had water technology that we could recycle water in our home for about 40 years, 50 years now.
Really?
But it's not part of the houses because it's an extra expense that no one saw a reason to need because water's endless, right?
Well, it's not endless, although people think that it is. While we're speaking, I'm just going to put some of the negative impact of our oceans warming.
Mm-hmm.
Coral bleaching is one that you had mentioned, right?
Migration of fish out of zones that they're usually in. New England has got an issue with sharks being more visible and more sharks turning up in the Northeast because the migratory patterns of the fish and the recovery of some fish have brought the sharks in.
And these are things, kind of being in the city. I never really thought of,
I grew up.
until
I
now.
grew up in the yeah. I grew up in the oceans, so that's a big thing. And we had Courtney on the show a little while ago talking about the Caymans and what's going on there.
So we've got sea
So,
level rising, warmer oceans contribute to the melting of the polar ice caps and the glaciers, which results in higher sea levels.
and the polar
And
ice caps are fresh water.
that's fresh water. Disruption of the marine ecosystem, which you were talking about, right?
Mhm.
And those organisms we rely upon, which can be very destructive for us. How do I pronounce this? Ocean acidification,
Yes,
uh, increased absorption of carbon dioxide by the oceans leads to ocean acidification, which changes the pH, which can harm marine life with calcium carbonate shells such as corals, mollusks, and other plankton species, making it harder for them
the
to build and maintain their
Great
structures.
Barrier Reef in Australia is dying, and the Australian government's thrown a whole bunch of money and technology out to try to figure out how to deal with it. One of the great beauties, one of the great wonders of our world is dying because of this loss of biodiversity. Getting fish. How many, have you gone out and tried to buy halibut recently? If you can
I have
find it,
not
it's 40 some odd dollars a pound.
really.
Yeah.
And that, you know what, Mark, that's not new. Because I've loved halibut, and I was telling Stephanie a couple years ago that it was hard to find halibut.
Well, it was 16, then it became up to 28, then it became 32. Now it's up into 40s.
Which is why I probably don't buy it now. I pretty
Yeah.
much eat just salmon unless I'm at a restaurant,
Yeah.
unless they're fish sticks.
Well, then you're getting mystery cod.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. We don't even know if that's fish. Uh,
Yeah.
but the impact on fisheries, right? Fish
Mhm.
species are affected by changing ocean temperatures, which can lead to
Yeah.
alterations in their distribution and abundance.
Yeah. Actually,
Bio
several of the fishing fleets are grounded right now because the fish are hard to find or almost impossible to find.
Extreme weather.
Mhm.
And I just saw this on, I think, ABC, where it was the same article talking about the 99 degrees or the triple degree temperatures in Florida and how the hurricanes and the cyclones are more devastating when they're hotter, which I don't know why, but uh, it definitely made sense to me. Or more frequent and more severe. That's what it was.
So, do we continue on the path that we continue on so far of talking to politicians and talking to corporations and getting our butts patted, or do we bring the people together and start doing something about it, at least in our own backyard?
We have to do that. And the last thing I'll add on this is just in Florida, and I mentioned this 2 weeks ago when I was on the show here, that many of the insurance companies are pulling out of
Ah,
insuring homeowners in Florida.
well, yeah, or just in general, because there was also, I was talking to Matthew about this earlier about the articles I'm seeing popping up periodically on all social media about insurance companies canceling homeowners insurance who have solar on their roofs. And the answer to that actually is that there was a change in the law in 2017 that addressed an issue that had been ongoing. So if there any installations after 2017, there should be no problems with, and there should be no issues with that at all. But the insurance companies are a for-profit organization. They're to mitigate the risk, and when the risk becomes too great, they're going to start canceling insurance because they're losing money. Nothing has to hold their feet to the fire to say that we are going to take you, we're going to protect you. We'll just cancel you. There's cancel culture for you.
Oh yeah, there is.
It
And
becomes
what
too
are you
much of a
supposed to
risk.
do?
Well, you take the risk of just running without insurance.
Well, and then is that even legal, right?
Yeah, you chose to live in Florida.
Well, I don't know if everyone
That's
makes
not
that
me saying
choice.
that about people in Florida. That's the insurance company's attitude. It says, well, you chose to live there. We can't insure it anymore because you're going to continue to get storms. Oh, and by the way, why is it illegal to talk about climate change in Florida? Huh. Maybe you need to vote somebody in who's going to deal with it.
And again, these are all the different ways that it impacts us, but they're hidden. We don't see it, right?
We don't connect the dots,
We
but
do not.
the dots are connecting themselves. And the trouble about the dots connecting themselves and us not coming together to fix it is there's body count. Let me remind you, there were 61,000 deaths last year in Europe because of the heat waves.
And it's interesting that the news, our local news, doesn't talk about that or provide those statistics.
Oh, it's not interesting at all. They're owned by corporations. They're looking for social media clicks. They're not looking for real news. I mean, you see something start and they never finish following it because they're on to the next news cycle. That's how
Yeah.
people get away with so much because they're always on to the next news cycle.
And this is just, whoops, sorry about that.
Which is why PBS is one of my favorite news stations because they cover things much more completely and provide context. Also, The Guardian out of the UK is also follows through on things.
And this article here is for Newsweek. I'm not going to go into it, but I just want to put that in the link for folks. But Florida insurance crisis explain why multiple insurers are leaving the state. And this was July 12th, so this is very recent. There's a little 50-second watch there, and I believe Farmers was the last or the latest AAA insurance company to pull out. So this is a huge issue. What happens if you do have a crisis? How do you repair your home? What do you do?
You pull it together. I mean, we are so ingrained with insurance and all the rest of it. I mean, we were talking earlier, we've talked about water, we've talked about power, but what happens in your all electric home if you suddenly don't have power? We are so ingrained and linked to things that need support services that are just not sufficient. There are some things, oh my God, I'm going to sound so, I'm sorry, folks, I'm going to sound like a socialist or a communist or something here. When I say, some things need to be beyond money.
Mhm.
Some things need to be about human life. And water and power and food need to be available.
100% for that. Let me give you a horn. Yeah, for sure.
And that's just, we need to come together. And so far, I mean, it's like a shell game where the P that's in the middle, they're getting rich, and the P in the middle, we're chasing the P, trying to find out under which shell it is. And while we're doing that, we end up with no food, no water, and no place to live,
Hmm.
and no power to watch TV anymore, or whatever, or power our phones.
Well, and the thing is this is going to sound, you said misbehave, right? This is going to sound
Yeah.
radical, but we can do it. And COVID showed us that we could, right? We did things in this country that we have never been done before, in regards to having to shut down and send out stimulus checks and build infrastructures that didn't exist previously, right? So we can do it, and we can do it quickly, erecting emergency structures for healthcare and whatnot. So uh, literally overnight, we can build, right?
We can, if we have the will to do it. The will can only come from we, the people. I mean, I say that again and again. You say this again and again. The truth is, get off your bloody asses, come together and figure this out because it's the only way it's going to happen.
Are you from across the pond, mate? Your bloody
No,
arses?
but I have friends, a lot of friends from Britain, and
Well, and
they got some great swearing.
and we're talking about the issues today, and I'm a solutions person, but you
Mhm.
have to understand the problems in order to find a solution, right? And there's so many different ways that we're being impacted every day, as I was saying before, that we don't even realize it. We feel it, but we don't know why we feel it, right? We don't know what the true catalyst of that is. But I do stand encouraged just from what I've seen and the people that I've met just in the last 2 weeks.
I was in an event for the Greater Kitsap Chamber of Commerce today with Matthew, and I actually had way more conversations about the Kitsap Resiliency Project and where our goals are, that and people being truly genuinely interested than I actually expected.
Mm, okay.
It was quite heartening. Made me want to come home and jump on the podcast and then get back to finishing up the report so I can get it out to everybody.
No, I like it. Well, I hope that motivation is sustaining.
Yeah, well, I've been working on this solidly now every spare minute for a couple 3 weeks. And remember I said I think it's going to be about 20-25 pages, and I'm at 67 pages now. Because as I start writing, I realize, well, I've got to cover this in. I've got to cover this in. But I've got to make it short and interesting, but I've got to put this in here. It has to you have to understand the context for this. So, and now I'm at 67 pages.
Well, I say make it as long as it needs to be, and there folks can always make a Cliff Note version of it
Well,
in short.
and you can break it out for each of the things you're focused. The focuses are on the projects we focus: community building, power, food, water, communications. And by the way, you were assigned as the head of the communications one. Just to let you know. Um, so each of these projects are a unit unto themselves in the document, but they can be broken out to be standalone if they need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to one, getting my hands on it and immersing myself in it, and then sharing that information out. I was telling Mark before the show that I've had plenty of conversations recently, centered around water here in Kitsap and what the impact is of our growth model as it is currently set without us really addressing the issues adequately here. And we've got our strategic plan for the city of Bremerton. I say we, the city council does, and the mayor. And I think there's some things that are definitely lacking and missing. And I get tourism bringing in people who can pay and support the economy here. I know it's a priority, uh, but for me, the priority are the people that are already here. That is, charity starts at home. We got folks that are right here. So instead of focused on bringing more people in to bring dollars in, which is, important, right? We need money to do things. We have to take care of each other first. That has to be the priority. And so
If
if
you're
we're
not
going to bring folks in, then it should be because it's going to support the people that are here and not in a capitalist way, if you will, where we're still overlooking those that are suffering and most in need.
and lack opportunity, we've
Mhm.
got to create. If this does not create opportunity, then why the hell are we doing it?
Right.
That's how we got here,
And we
and
can.
we can. I have been doing this for a long time now, and when I sit down to write out a project, I look at the project and say, how can I make this a win-win? How can I create it so everybody comes out ahead? And if I can't find a way to do it, then I'm doing it wrong. Not doing it so everybody wins is just lazy.
Mm.
You think about you, and that's as far as it goes. What will it do for me? Bringing all those people in and bringing all those dollars in, what it'll do for me? And what happened? And this is going back to the OSO and the developers. It's the same mindset. I'm going to make mine, and then if those people don't have water to drink in 10 years, it's not my problem.
Well, it's going to be your problem.
Yeah, well, just think about it. How do we ever think about the mistakes Gary Locke made?
Uh, I can't tell you what the mistakes are that Gary Locke made.
I don't know either, but if people don't go back to a politician, 10 years farther on and think about that politician as creating the problem. They blame whatever's in power at that moment. It's the way the American people work, right? Um,
Well, usually they'll blame the the political party before, right?
right.
Even if they
Or
have
the
to
one
go
in power
back and
now. No, they blame the one in power now. But the whole point is that nobody goes back and blames anybody. We need to stop that. We need to start looking at things going forward and find wins for everybody. And that's just a matter of being able to focus on that type of solution. Speaking of wins, I have a question for you because I've been watching your show on the city council, and I
you've
saw
been
Jennifer.
watching my show on city council. I wouldn't call it my show, but yeah, okay.
And so I was watching Jennifer Chamberlain talk about very stirring conversation about her 4 minute piece on the camping ordinance, and
Mhm.
saying let's just take that off the table and continue to work on it. But I didn't actually get the solution. Do you want to fill everybody else in on what's going on with that? We've
Yeah,
got a few
well,
minutes left.
right now there's still no solution. I believe they would like to invoke the Lakewood model, if I'm not mistaken. There is, I think it's study session this Wednesday, or today, this evening, and then so they're going to talk about it again tonight or during city council, and then next Wednesday, the following Wednesday, I believe is when they're going to push through the ordinance. And then at that point, we'll see what happens. I could tell you that many of us aren't happy with what the city is doing. What they're saying is they have no choice because what currently stands is illegal. Um, my frustration again is just what I was saying, right? During COVID, we did things that we've never done before. And if we are government and we make laws, then we need to make the laws, right? My frustration is yes, you can go and look around the country for high impact practices. I hate best practices, but we are unique to us, right? We're here on a peninsula. We've got the shipyard. We're 30 minutes, on a foot ferry from Seattle. So we have all these different things that other, cities and municipalities don't have. So let's find our own answer and solve the problem. But we seem to just look around. Well, what can we do here? What can we do there? And so that's very frustrating to me. And if you're making the policies, if you're making the law, then say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and solve this. And if you're looking at it from a humanistic standpoint, but we're looking for a win for everyone, and capitalism still reigns supreme. You want to bring some dollars into Bremerton, you want to bring dollars into Kitsap County, solve homelessness, because now you will be the expert that goes to the other cities and the other municipalities to show what you did and how to implement it, because everyone's looking for the answer, right? So stop looking around and saying, well, what should we do? What can they kind of did this, they kind of did that. It didn't solve the problem, right? It's still an issue. So that's my thought on it. So I do encourage people to tune in to city council, make public comment in writing. If you can't show up and make your public comment, they do read it. Your voice is heard. Many voices is what gets things moving. What Mark was saying is absolutely right. If 1,000 people came to city council and said, "Hey, we're all speaking in one voice, and this is what we want," yeah, stuff is going to change, and you can see that with many of the folks that are coming here and migrating because it's cheaper to live here in Kitsap County. Not for us that are in the county, but those that live in Seattle, work in Seattle, or we're living in Tacoma, whatever the case may be, saying, "Hey, we want bike lanes, we want this, we want that." And what's happening? They're getting their bike lanes because they're filling up and they're talking to their local politicians and demanding it, right? We just need to come together and do that, and we can make that change also.
Yep. Could you take a second and talk about the camping ordinance and what it is?
Ooh, not with the full education. Let me see if I could pull it up. There's a summary here. Give me just a second. Let me see if I can pull it up. You put me on the spot there, buddy. City council.
So, for all of the rest of you out there, we can't play music on here because we get the the copyright hits.
Do,
But
do, 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 do.
so for all of you that are listening to this program, just turn your Spotify on and play "Power to the People." So can't hit us for suggesting you listen to music on your Spotify account.
No, what I'll do here is I'll just refer here to the Kitsap Sun's article here on July 3rd. Why unauthorized camping laws aren't enforced and what other Northwest cities are doing. This article was by Philip Kin, and this was on July 3rd, like I said before. Uh, in '09, six homeless or recently homeless people sued the city of Boise for criminalizing them for camping on the street. 10 years later, 2019, in the case that became known as Martin versus Boise, the Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against the city on the basis of the Eighth Amendment's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. The language of the decision was clear. As long as there is no option of sleeping indoors, the government cannot criminalize indigent homeless people for sleeping outdoors on public property or false premise they had a choice in the matter. As soon as Martin came out, the West Coast cities lost one of their most used tools for hiding the most visible signs of homelessness. True story. Most cities had municipal ordinances banning camping in public spaces, which they then used to clear encampments. Now these ordinances would likely be illegal. Cities in Kitsap immediately reconsidered their own ordinances, which is where we're at. At the time, Poulsbo and Bremerton banned camping in all public spaces, while Bainbridge Island only restricted camping in parks. Port Orchard's ordinance passed in 2016 was already non punitive unless there were available shelter beds. So far, none of the cities have changed their ordinances, which Bremerton will be changing theirs probably in about 2 weeks. Instead, at least one city, Bremerton, has relaxed enforcement of its ordinances. For example, the city issued 18 citations for public camping in 2018, but just one in the year after the Martin decision. And so, you know, one of the things that they are in discussions of doing, and I really want you to put yourself in the position of someone who's unhoused. Let's say you have a tent and you're living on ML King, right? Because this is the biggest spot they're looking at. And they say, hey, you can't be here. It's illegal for you to be here. The ordinance would say, okay, not only can you not be here during this time, right? You need to be out of the area. It's not going to be good enough for you to pack up your tent, right? Let's say you've got your luggage and you've packed it up into this luggage, and you've got one big luggage and maybe a carry-on that you can stack together, right? And you're just kind of existing down there. You got a chair or whatever. Nope, you can't do that, right? That would be illegal. But it's not illegal for the mother who's got her stroller and all of her bag with all the stuff to take care of her kiddos. That would be pretty much the equivalent thing, right? That wouldn't be illegal, but this would. And so those are some of the issues in a way that I want you to kind of look at that. And if we're saying, hey, there's no shelter beds available, but you don't want folks to be camping out, they may set it up to where, hey, you can't be here during these certain hours. Well, where exactly are they supposed to go? And secondarily, the resources, Salvation Army, Peninsula Health Services, and many others are right up in that area, right? KCR, Bremerton Housing Authority, they're all within a block of each other. So now you're saying not only can you not be here, but we want to move you further away from those resources, right? So where are they supposed to go? And so that's really that in a nutshell. Uh, and again, why this needs to be solved and we need to do something about it that's different. And we just need to have, again, that political will, uh, the intestinal fortitude to try something, understanding that you're probably not going to solve it on the first go. You're probably going to make a bunch of mistakes. It may not work as intended. And if that doesn't work, you're going to try something else. But we have to do something. And we should have already done something, right? And one of the issues that's happened is one, we had COVID, right? Two, we had the Salvation Army that says they want to get out of the emergency shelter business. So that was an issue. Three, and of course, housing is still increasing, or homelessness is still increasing this whole time. We have folks, the rescue mission moves into the Quality Inn apartments. 4, you've got Port Orchard that is building a shelter, but now they're having permit issues. They can't buck the line, even though they're the county and the permitting office is in the same building. They can't, buck the line and say, hey, give us the permit so we can build and get these folks into a shelter, right? They may start breaking ground on executing the permits. I believe in August is what I learned in last Wednesday's housing meeting. But who knows when that shelter is going to open and be ready? 5, if you move those people over, are they going to keep Quality Inn and then be able to move those folks that are unhoused now into the Quality Inn? 6, if I'm numbering it correctly, it's not a low barrier shelter, right? So there are barriers that are in place to where, depending on what you have going on, you may be excommunicated and kicked out, right? There are some people that cannot go inside Salvation Army. There are some people that cannot get a shower anywhere. There aren't any bathrooms. So these are huge issues that exist. So it's low barrier, but not low enough to present and do that. And then 7, you also have, and this is a hard one for me, you have folks, you have people that are preying on our most vulnerable through dealing drugs and threatening folks and forcing folks into prostitution and whatnot, right? And the police are saying, hey, our hands are tied, we don't have enough resources to do what we need to do to protect and serve, right? And it has to be that for every citizen, right? Protect and serve. Those that are unhoused need protection and service, and not law enforcement, um, except for those that are preying on them. And so what happens is everyone who is unhoused gets a bad rap for, again, like we say, for the few bad apples. So for those of us that love the blue, right, and say, hey, not all police are bad, right? And we could get political about that. But I'm just using that as an illustration just to show that when folks that love the police speak out against the police and they say, hey, defund the police and do this, you're like, oh, no, no, it's just a few bad ones, just deal with that. It's the same with the unhoused, right? Everyone, people didn't ask to be homeless. People didn't ask for the situations. They found themselves in this situation, however they got there, and they're there. So how do we help them? How do we love on them to get them to a place of security, right? If you need 3 times the rent, if you need first, last, and deposit in this town, and it's $1,500 a month for rent, that means you need $4,500, you know, uh, to be earning in order to move into to a space. My space next door, I think, is 1,400. I believe is what it goes for. Right. This is a very small 2-bedroom duplex. So how do you get someone to that point where they can even do that and then sustain that? Right. What job are they going to be able to earn? Do they have a history of positive rental history? Nope, because they're unhoused. Right? Have they been on a job for 2 years? Nope. Do they have the job skills? Nope. Are there jobs for them? Nope. So there's all of these issues, but then we're saying somehow pull yourself up from your bootstraps, make it happen, and we just have to deal with it. So there's a lot of different things that are going on all on at the same time. I'll put this Kitsap Sun article in the chat for you so you can see it. Some of it is opinion, some of it is fact, but that's really what's going on. It's currently illegal. They have to do something and make it legal. But again, they have really no answers. But we have to say, you know what? I get there's different pockets of money, right? Hey, there's $5 million to do a roundabout over there by the Norm Dix building. Okay, that's a different pot of money. You can't take that money and do this. However, we have to find the political will and force city council and the mayor and the rest of the folks to say, hey, you've got to take care of the people. We do a construction site, there's a porta potty. We have a festival, there's a porta potty. We had a picnic a couple Fridays ago up at the Old West Park, which I always forget the new name, right? And they had porta potties just for that event, right? We can do it. We have our parks. Show up to a park, you get a porta potty, you get a bathroom. We can do that. We should do that. We have to do that.
So I would change one word of what you said there.
Sure.
Instead of political will, I'd say human will, because we have to start rethinking it. politician and politics and democracy are supposed to reflect the needs of humanity,
Mhm.
and so we need to think of it in terms of humanity.
And again, I may diverge with some folks where people are saying, hey, well, we need to. I don't think money should be in basic needs. However, it's not realistic to say we're going to take it out of that. However, there should be a way where there can be a win, right? If this is the sector that you compete in and this is how you make your money, fine. But you're not going to do it by preying on our basic needs, right? You want to be a housing developer? This is how you're going to do it. No, you're not getting tax breaks for 30 years. No, you're not going to do this. There are things that we have to do. And if you're not going to do that and there's a need, then we will create the need, right? Well, maybe what we need to do is Kitsap County needs to be our own housing development. And not only can we build our own housing here, but we can go out and we can bid against other developers that are preying on other communities in the country. And as we start pushing up federally, companies like BlackRock and all these other folks that are just buying up commercial property and pushing folks out to making home ownership an impossibility because it's just not just commercial property, but they're just sucking up all the property. We
Private
said, no,
equity.
yep, that can't happen. That
Yep.
can't happen.
So I'm going to say that that's going to need to be the last word because we're at 203 and we started at 204 or 104.
That's the last word.
Yeah. Hoo-yah.
Little Star Wars, I have spoken.
Yeah.
For those of you that are Mandalorian fans,
Yep.
this is the way.
And this is how we misbehave. We change the rules together.
Together, together,
So
together.
how about this as a concept? By embracing our humanity, performing real democracy, we are actually misbehaving in our culture.
I was going to say that about 30 minutes ago. Yeah. Yeah, together. And that's why I don't try to demonize commercial developers, right? It's what they do, it's how they exist. We've allowed it. So how do we? You talked about a win for everyone. What is the
Yep.
win for everyone? You just don't get to win at this level. You'll still win. You'll still make a profit, right? You'll still be a job creator and all that good stuff. You're just not going to make it to the
Well,
level that you were before.
the the win is if you play nice, you get more work.
We recalibrate. That's it.
Yeah.
Put things in its proper perspective.
Yep.
And it solves our issue because what the city is looking for and what all cities are looking for are taxpayers, right? People that can pay into the system and have a nice resilient community. Well, you already have the people here. Help them to be resilient.
Yeah. A rising tide lifts all boats. It's time to get the tide rising. Or
Allegedly,
all
unless your
boats.
boat has
Yeah.
holes in it.
Yeah. Well, then somebody has to help you fix it, right?
Well, but we can do that.
We can.
Let's play Oprah. You get a boat. You get a boat. All right, fine. Final
Yeah.
word, man.
How come mine is small and plastic and floats in a bathtub?
Oh man. Man, well,
All
it was a
right.
great show. Let me hop off my soapbox there.
Yep.
We will have city council this evening. Study session will be live here on the conduit, so do tune in. The best way to get involved is to get involved, and a lot of folks think that takes a whole lot. Some of it is just being informed. Being informed is the first step of getting involved, right? If you've never watched a city council meeting, get in there and watch it. It can be boring. Take a walk while you do it. Do it during dinner. Make a discussion with your friends and your family based on what you're hearing. If you have ideas, send it to city council. And believe me, they probably haven't heard it before, right? And if they have, they need to hear it from more voices to say, you know what? This is what the constituents in my district, in my city, in my county are saying. This is what we need to do. That's
Amen.
the final word. All right. So for Mark Borray Frost, I'm Marwan Cameron. This is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. You're on the Conduit Network. We thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tonight at 5.